I'm going to go ahead and call this case. This is Street v. Taylor. Are the parties present and ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
We'll start off with housekeeping matters. Plaintiff, do you have any housekeeping matters that we need to address today?
Yes, Your Honor. Would you like us to make formal introductions on the record?
That'd be great.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Jordan Avey, last name spelled A-V-E-Y. Here on behalf of the plaintiff in this case, Jordan Street. I'm also here with my co-counsel, Ms. Rima Sahakian, as well. And when the court is ready, we do have some pretrial matters to discuss and housekeeping matters.
We'll let the defense introduce themselves and then we'll take up your housekeeping matters. Mr. Love.
Your Honor, Eric Love on behalf of the defendant, Reese Taylor. I'm joined with my co-chair, Lauren Doyd.
Very well.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning. All right, Miss Avey.
Yes. Your Honor, prior to trial today, opposing counsel and I were able to meet and confer and discuss the one substantive matter that I had planned to bring forth in front of the court. And we have stipulated that no one in this trial will introduce or discuss Exhibit 12, which is a handwritten note.
So you're asking for Exhibit 12 to be excluded from the trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
And defense, you have no?
No, Your Honor, we've stipulated to that prior to today's trial already.
Very well, then Exhibit 12 will be excluded.
Opposing counsel and I have also met and agreed that we both think that Exhibit 3 is admissible, and we are now asking the court to pre-admit Exhibit 3 prior to trial. Mr.
Love, any objection?
No objection to that, Your Honor. I believe we agreed that it would be 14, 15, and 3, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm sorry, I assume that Mr. Love, you would say the 14 and 15, but yes, Your Honor, we did agree 14, 15, and 3.
If there are no objections from either side, we can go ahead and admit those as pretrial matters.
Yes.
Very well. So we have Exhibits 3, 14, and 15.
Yes, 14 is the toxicology report, I believe, and 15 is the autopsy report, Your Honor.
Very well.
Exhibits 3, 14, and 15 are admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. And as for our housekeeping matters, because of the jurisdiction that we are in, where we are doing a bench trial, however, we do have outside evaluators that we would like to be able to evaluate our skills. Today, we will be asking the court for permission to publish exhibits for the court after they have been admitted into evidence. And this language is just to notify the court that we'd like to publish the exhibit so that all of the evaluators can see it as well.
Yes, ma'am. Very well. Anything further from the plaintiff?
Yes, we invoke the rule and we would ask to keep our party, Jordan Street, in the courtroom constructively.
Very well.
No objection, Your Honor. We just ask that obviously Reese Taylor be able to remain in the courtroom as well.
Very well.
And with that, the plaintiff is ready for trial.
All right. Defense, do you have any housekeeping or pretrial issues we need to take up?
Yes, Your Honor. The first couple of housekeeping things, I just wanted to ask the court's permission to publish on the screen Exhibits 4, 14, and 15 in my opening, which have been previously admitted. Or excuse me, 4 has not been yet.
So it's 3? It's 3 or 4?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. It's Exhibit 4. It's a picture of the field that the instance of today's case took place on.
Do you have any objection to that, Ms.?
No, Your Honor. I do plan on using Exhibit 3 in my opening, which has been pre-admitted. No objection. I'm sure defense has a good faith belief.
Very well.
And then, Your Honor, I have substantive motions when Your Honor is ready.
Go ahead.
The first substantive motion, to give some context, there was an incident involving Coach Taylor, the defendant in today's case. This case is a wrongful death case in which, unfortunately, Rory Street passed away due to consuming cocaine and an underlying heart condition. Coach Taylor was on the field the day he died running a practice. In a previous incident, Coach Taylor had been involved in an incident with a previous student where he grabbed the student by the back of his collar. We're moving to exclude this under Rule 404A as propensity evidence. We believe that the only way this evidence could be introduced is to show having conformity therewith, so we're moving to exclude it.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. An exception under Rule 404B for action in conformity is the use of evidence to show knowledge. And in this case, we do think that the defendant's knowledge is relevant because, like in the prior incident, when he grabbed the other student by the back of the neck and pulled him up, he did the same thing in this case. But today, she will be claiming that she does not believe she did anything wrong and that she would not do anything different. However, with the prior case, she admits that she knows she did something wrong, and she admits that she knows that she went too far with those actions. So this evidence would be used to show that additionally, she also has knowledge that her actions in this case were unreasonable.
Mr. Love, your motion to exclude will be denied.
That's right. Your Honor, our second substantive motion is under Rule 407. It'll come to the court's attention that there were, after the death of Rory Street, the school and Coach Taylor decided to put up tents and provide drinks to the students following his death. And we're moving to exclude that under Rule 407 as a subsequent remedial measure. These were actions taken to make the play area more safe for the students.
Any response?
No, Your Honor, I believe that we actually met and conferred about this, and I agreed to stipulate that we will not introduce that evidence today.
Very well. This motion to exclude under 407 related to the subsequent remedial measures will be granted.
And with that, Your Honor, we're ready to proceed to opening statement.
All right, very well. Miss Avey, you have the floor for your opening statement, and you can proceed when you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, this is a case about a high school soccer coach who cared more about punishing his students than protecting them. On September 7th, 2018, Jordan Street sent her daughter Rory to an afternoon soccer practice at Waco High School, fully expecting that the defendant, her daughter's soccer coach, would make sure that her daughter was well coached, but also well protected. What she didn't know, what she could never have expected, was that this coach would become so angry with Rory that she would punish her by forcing her to perform an endless series of grueling exercise in the sweltering heat. Exercises that left this young girl seizing and convulsing on that field. Exercises that caused heat strokes so severe that Jordan Street lost her only child and Rory Street lost her life. Today, the issue for you to decide is whether the defendant will be held responsible for her negligent actions and their deadly consequences. And today, we are confident that she will be, because the evidence will show two things. First, that the defendant failed to protect Rory Street. And second, that the defendant's failures caused Rory Street's death. So let's talk about that first thing that the evidence will show, that the defendant failed to protect Rory Street. Now, to understand that, we have to go back to Waco High School on that soccer field on September 7th, 2018. Rory Street is in the middle of a grueling practice. It's 103 degrees outside. It is September in Waco, Texas, and it's about 4 p.m. And Rory doesn't feel too good. The more time goes on, the worse she starts to feel. Her chest starts to hurt. She starts to stumble. She just feels so tired. She starts to not go after the ball. She starts to not make her passes, and that's unlike Rory. And she doesn't know what to do because all of a sudden she hears, "Go on and take your sorry butt to Burma Road. You're useless on the field. So might as well run until you pass out." That voice is her coach. And it is not a figment of her imagination. It is right there coming across the soccer field at maximum volume. So Rory goes to Burma Road. And what you'll learn today about Burma Road is that it's a tradition at Waco High School that the women's soccer coaches engage in. And every time they feel like one of their players isn't giving their all, or their player needs a little bit of discipline, they send them off to Burma Road, where they do 120 yards of grueling exercises over and over and over again until the coach decides that they're satisfied. 30 yards of running, then 30 yards of dribbling, shooting on a goal, and then 60 yards back to the starting line on their hands and knees. That's Burma Road. So even though Rory is feeling terrible, she knows she has no choice. She goes out to Burma Road, where her friend Aubrey already is. And immediately, Aubrey Sarenson, another senior on Rory's team, notices that something is not right. And when Aubrey takes the witness stand today, she'll tell you that that's exactly what she thought. She immediately, within minutes, noticed that Rory was pale, that Rory wasn't feeling funny, that Rory had chest pains because Rory told her. And right when Aubrey thinks that, well, maybe we should tell the coach, they hear the voice again. And they hear, "Damn it, Street, you don't practice worth crap. And now you're lollygagging over there. I guess you think you're special. Well, come over here and I'll show you how not special you really are." And so at this point, Rory, who's been in the 103-degree heat all afternoon, runs back to the scrimmage field. And what she thought couldn't get any worse truly turns into a living nightmare. Because her coach, the defendant in this case, has decided that she is going to test out a new drill. And Rory's going to stand in the middle of the field while all the members of her team line up on her side. And then they come and tackle her one by one. Each time the whistle blows, someone dives at Rory's feet, knocks her to the ground, and then she's yanked back up by her coach. For 15 times, she hit that ground, and she was pulled back up. But after 15 times, Rory Street's body couldn't take it anymore. And when she collapsed, she didn't get back up. And she seized, and she convulsed, and her entire team witnessed it as she died on the ground right in front of them. And that brings me to the second thing that the evidence has shown, that the evidence will show, that the defendant's failures caused Rory Street's death. Today, we'll bring you an expert report in this case. And we're going to show you that Rory's cause of death is not disputed. Everyone agrees that it was a sudden cardiac attack. But what is disputed is what actually caused that cardiac episode. You see, our expert, a 20-year veteran of the cardiology department here at Memorial Hospital in Waco, who's been treating heart patients for years. He says that it was clearly heat stroke. And in that expert report, he'll walk you through all the symptoms and how they each match up with heat stroke. And he'll also tell you that the fact that, that Rory had fluid in her brain and that she had muscle breakdown, that's also consistent with heat stroke. And he'll tell you that those two symptoms, those aren't consistent with cocaine-induced cardiac attacks. And you may be wondering to yourself, why are we talking about cocaine? Well, today, the defendant will be forced to admit that she doesn't believe she did anything wrong. And instead, she actually blames Rory Street for what happened in this case. That she believes Rory Street had ingested cocaine before coming to practice and that that's what caused her death. Now, Your Honor, let me be clear. Nobody denies that Rory Street did have cocaine in her system at the time of her death. But what you'll learn today throughout this trial is that it was a nominal amount. It was very small. And the cardiologist, he'll tell you that it couldn't have caused this damage because it was so small. Today, we're confident that once you see all of the evidence in this case, you'll see that the defendant is not somebody who lacked responsibility in this case. She is someone who went out of her way to punish her students because her desire to punish overcame her duty to protect. And at the end of this trial, I'll stand before you and ask you to return the only just verdict, the only right verdict, a verdict finding the defendant liable.
Mr. Love, are you ready for your opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You can proceed when you're ready.
Your Honor, what happened to Rory Street, it's nothing short of a tragedy. A parent losing their child is one of the worst things that can happen to anyone. But it wasn't drills and running and soccer practice that caused Rory Street's death. It was two things. One thing that only Rory knew, and one thing that no one knew. You're going to hear that that soccer practice was like any normal soccer practice at Waco High School. If I could have Exhibit 4 shown. Ms. Doy, if you could please put that out. This is the field where they practice. Every season, every practice, all year long. It was the normal, same field every time. And it was that field on September 7th. Thank you, Ms. Doy. You're going to hear that the weather was normal. We're talking about Waco, Texas. It was hot. We're in Waco. That was normal. That wasn't something Rory had never experienced before. We're talking about drills, running the Burma Trail. That was normal. You're going to hear today that generations of women soccer players ran that trail. Coach Reese Taylor ran that trail herself when she was a soccer player. You're going to hear that Rory's mom was a soccer player at Waco High School and she ran that trail. You're going to hear the day that Rory died, another girl on the team was running that trail. In fact, you're going to hear that that girl, Aubrey Saracen, she was running that trail before Rory showed up, and she ran that trail with Rory, and she ran it after Rory. She was fine because it was normal. You're going to hear that they did side tackle drills. Side tackles are a normal part of a soccer game. You're going to hear, well, this drill was a new one, not one that had been done before. Practicing side tackles in practice was normal. So if it wasn't the weather, it wasn't the drills, it wasn't Rory herself, all the things were the same. What you're going to hear today is that those two things that were different are why Rory unfortunately lost her life. Number one was something that only Rory Street knew. You're going to see a toxicology report. I'll show it to you right now, actually. Miss Doyle, could you please put that up? This is a toxicology report that was conducted on Rory's body after she passed away. As you can see right there on the third line, it says cocaine positive, 60 nanograms per milliliter. This is a very small amount of cocaine. But you're going to hear that no one knew that Rory was using cocaine. In fact, this may have been the first time she had ever done it before. Her mom didn't know. Her friend didn't know. None of her teachers knew. So how could Coach have known? But members of the jury, a little amount of cocaine, who knows what that would have done alone? But the second thing that caused her death was something that no one knew. Because that small amount of cocaine was fatal because Rory had an underlying hidden heart condition. The autopsy report found this condition. If I could have the autopsy report up. You're going to see, if you look down at the bottom, it says there was a finding, on page 1, there was a finding of myocarditis. I'm sure I butchered that word. That's not something that her mom knew. That's not something her friends knew. That's probably not something Rory knew. So you got to ask yourself today's trial, how could Coach have known? Members of the jury, there were only two things different between her and every other kid who practiced soccer at Waco High School. Now, I'm not saying Rory Street was a drug addict or used drugs or she's a bad person. Every kid makes mistakes. Teenagers take risks. They usually aren't fatal, but that's what happened to Rory. So what about Coach Reese Taylor? Coach Reese Taylor has been a coach for 26 years. 26 years of not just coaching soccer, but coaching every possible sport you can imagine. Coach Taylor knows how to practice at his games. Coach Taylor ran all of these drills with his kids every single time he had to practice. It was normal. But two things were different. Under the jury, I'm not going to, or Your Honor, I'm not going to say we should blame Rory for what happened. You shouldn't blame Rory for a mistake she made. But when you listen to the evidence today, I want you to consider who could possibly have known about those two things. Because you're going to hear that that condition from our expert report, you're going to see that that condition that she had in her heart, mixing with that just a small amount of cocaine, was part of the reason she died. And Coach couldn't have known about either of those two things. That's why at the end of today's trial, when you hear all the evidence, we'll ask that you find him not lying. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Ms. Avey, are you ready to proceed and call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Aubrey Saracen to the stand.
Before you begin, Ms. Avey, while Ms. Saracen's getting settled, I forgot to say this in housekeeping, but I just wanted to let y'all know that I'll give you a time check at the end of the plaintiff's case, at the end of the defense case, and at the end of the defense case. So we'll go straight through and then take a quick time to do some math right there.
Okay.
Proceed when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself to the judge and tell us where you live.
Sure. My name is Aubrey Saracen, and I live right here in Waco.
How long have you lived here in Waco?
My whole life.
So where'd you go to school?
I went to Waco High School.
Do you have any college plans?
I'm currently a freshman at Rice University.
So I want to go back actually to high school, and I want to ask you a couple questions about those. Did you play any sports when you were at Waco High School?
I did. So I played soccer the full 4 years through high school.
And were you ever on a team with someone with the name Rory Street?
I was. I used to know Rory.
And what was your relationship like with her?
We were best friends. We grew up together, and she was just a really great person.
Now, you're saying was, I do have to ask, Ms. Saracen, why are you using past tense?
Well, on September 7th of 2018, Rory died playing soccer when we were at Waco High.
Now, I want to talk with you about that day that Rory died, starting with what really happened. Can you start from the beginning and tell us what happened on September 7th, 2018?
Sure. So it started out just like any regular day. We went to school, and then afterwards around 3:30, we went out to the soccer field for our soccer practice. And it was just different that day.
What do you mean it was different?
Well, Rory was a really excellent soccer player. But that day she was just a little pale. She wasn't playing like herself. And Coach Taylor, who was our soccer coach, was just on a rampage that day with making us do drills and running.
So you said that Coach Taylor was making you do drills and running. What kinds of drills were you asked to do?
So one of the main ones that we usually had to do was doing the Burma Road run.
And so were you asked to do Burma Road on September 7th?
Yes, both Rory and I were asked to do this. So what it entails is that you first have to dribble the ball for 30 yards and then sprint for 30 yards. And then you have to crawl back, bear crawl style, on your hands and your knees, the entire 60 yards back, and just do that over and over again.
You say over and over again. When do you stop?
Whenever Coach Taylor tells us that we can stop.
So why would players such as Rory and yourself get sent to Burma Road?
It just kind of depended on Coach Taylor's mood that day. Usually it was a punishment if we missed passes or we weren't hitting our goals.
And on that day, you said that Coach Taylor sent you there. Do you know if he also sent Rory there as well?
Yes, it was just the two of us that day that were doing the Burma Road run.
Now, Ms. Saracen, I would ask you to get Exhibit 5. I believe you have an exhibit folder with you. If you could get Exhibit 5 out and let me know when you have that, and referring court and counsel to Exhibit 5 for identification.
Got it.
Ms. Saracen, do you recognize Exhibit 5?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
That's the scrimmage field.
And is that picture a fair and accurate depiction of the East practice field?
Yes.
Your Honor, plaintiff moves Exhibit 5 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
And may my co-counsel publish it for the court?
They may.
Thank you, Rima. Ms. Saracen, you said that this was a picture of the East practice field. Does this include Burma Road in it?
No, it does not.
And so how far away is Burma Road from this area of the practice field?
It's not that far. I'd say maybe 20 yards or so.
Okay. And is this where practice was being held on September 7th, 2018?
Yes. So that's the area that we would do any of our drills and passes and scrimmages was in that area pictured.
So I want to talk about what was happening once you got out to Burma Road. Were you on Burma before Rory?
I was. So I was the first one to get sent there, and then Coach Taylor, I just heard some yelling, and then after I heard the yelling, Rory was sent over there as well.
What did you hear that the coach was yelling?
The coach said that go on and take your sorry butt over to Burma Road. You're useless on the field, so you might as well run until you pass out, which is what happened.
So Coach Taylor actually said you should run until you pass out.
Yes, that's exactly what Coach Taylor said.
Once Rory arrived over where you were at Burma Road, did you notice anything unusual going on with her?
Yeah, I mean, Rory she was just a really great athlete, excellent soccer player. And it wasn't like her to miss her passes, but that day she just seemed a little pale. Her cheeks were flushed. She seemed out of breath. It just seemed pretty out of the norm for how Rory usually was.
So while you guys were over there, was anyone watching you? Any coach or adult figure?
No, it was just the two of us on Burma Road.
And was it hot out there?
That's an understatement. It was scorching hot. I mean, it was the middle of September at around 3:30 p.m. I'd say it was well over 100 degrees.
Once you started Burma Road, were you ever given a break?
No.
Was Rory ever given a break?
No.
And while you were there, were you in the shade or is Burma Road in the sun?
It is completely in the sun. The soccer field and Burma Road is just straight grass. There's no trees, there's no shade. It's just you in the sun.
Were you offered any water while you were out there at Burma?
I don't remember taking any water breaks.
Do you know if Rory was offered any water?
No.
And is that a no, she was not offered any water, or no, you don't know?
Sorry, no, she was not offered any water when we were doing the Burma Road runs.
Okay. Now, did Rory stay on Burma Road for the rest of practice?
No, so after we'd been on Burma Road for a bit, I heard Coach Taylor yelling something else out at Rory, and then Rory was called over back to the scrimmage field to do an exercise that we've never done before.
So I do want to get into that, but what did you hear Coach Taylor yell at Rory at that moment?
So I heard Coach Taylor say, "Damn it, Street, you don't practice worth crap, and now you're lollygagging over there. I guess you think you're special. Come over here and I'll show you how not special you are."
When you heard this language from your coach, were you shocked by it at all?
I mean, Coach Taylor tends to get pretty upset and angry when we don't do things perfectly. But I mean, she just seemed really angry that day.
Was it normal for Coach Taylor to yell at you or your teammates?
It was, yes.
And I do have to ask, what kind of relationship do you have with Taylor?
And I wouldn't say I like Coach Taylor, to be frank. When I was a senior, I got replaced on the first string by Coach Taylor's daughter. But besides that, Coach Taylor was just a really angry coach. And then what happened with Rory just kind of put it over the edge.
So you said that Rory was called over to do a drill that you guys had never seen before. Can you tell us what you mean by all of that? What was going on?
So when I was looking over, they were doing something called a sliding tackle drill. So it was Rory, and then all the other players were lined up looking at each other. And then one by one, they would run towards Rory and knock her over and try to get the ball out from under her feet.
And you, at this point, were you on the scrimmage field with Rory, or were you still on Burma Road?
No, I was watching from Burma Road.
And so you could see all of this happening from 20 yards away?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, there's no trees or anything on the field, so there was nothing there that obstructed my vision.
Was Rory the only one who was being tackled?
Yeah, she was. It was pretty rough.
And while this was going on, were you able to see any type of reaction from Rory?
Yeah. Every time that one of those players ran towards her and knocked her over, she would fall to the ground. And she wasn't even strong enough that day to get up on her own. Coach Taylor would go over there and yank her up by the back of her jersey and stand her up and wait for her to get knocked over again. She seemed exhausted and just not herself.
Did you ever see Coach Taylor say anything to Rory about her appearance?
No, Coach Taylor was focused on making sure Rory got the drill.
So, Observation, Your Honor, move to strike that testimony as speculation. Your Honor, you're muted.
Could you repeat your question, counsel?
Yes. Did you ever see if Coach Taylor commented on Rory's appearance?
And Your Honor, if I may, the witness testified that the coach seemed focused on making sure Rory did the drill. Speculation in the mindset of Coach Taylor.
Overruled.
Now, Ms. Saracen, you said that you watched Rory get knocked over a couple times. How many times was it in total?
It was 15 times of her getting knocked over and getting yanked up again just to get knocked over again.
And you said it stopped after 15. What happened after 15?
Well, after the 15th time, Rory didn't get back up. Rory didn't move because when she got knocked over that 15th time, it was horrible. She started convulsing and looked like what I would assume is something like a seizure, and she was twitching, and that went on for a couple of minutes. And then after that, she just stopped and she died.
Thank you, Ms. Saracen. Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Love?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Saracen, you were Rory's best friend, and even you didn't know she was doing cocaine, did you?
No, Rory wasn't. I'd never seen anything like that.
Well, you grew up with Rory, right?
Yeah, we were friends for our whole life.
You went to school together?
Yes.
You were teammates?
Yes.
You saw each other almost every day?
Yeah, we went to school together.
And you had never seen her do cocaine?
No, never.
You had never heard from her, or one of her friends, that she was using cocaine?
No, never.
So you didn't know?
No.
I want to talk about some things that happened that day, starting with the Burma run. Now, the Burma run, before that day, you had done it before, hadn't you?
Yeah, that's an exercise that Coach Taylor often had us do when she was mad at us.
You'd say often everyone on the team had done it before.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And that day you were running the Burma run.
Yes.
You had started before Rory had started running the run, right?
Yes.
You were already there.
Yes, I was.
And you're running along with Rory, right?
Yes, I was.
For about 5 minutes?
Yeah, about that.
And then she stopped running it, right?
Right. She got called over by Coach Taylor.
And you kept running.
Yes, I wasn't told I could stop yet.
So you didn't pass out, right?
No, I didn't.
You didn't feel faint?
No.
And Miss Saracen, you weren't doing cocaine that day, were you?
No, of course not.
You hadn't done cocaine in the days leading up to it, had you?
No, I've never done cocaine.
Do you have an underlying heart condition?
Not that I'm aware of.
Hopefully you don't. Hopefully none of us do. So after that happened, you'd agree with me that running the Burma run, it was normal for you and the other people on the team. It was normal.
Yeah, it's something that we did pretty regularly.
Okay, so let's talk about the weather that day. You said it was September, right?
Yes.
Now you grew up in Waco, Texas.
Yes, I did.
So you know it gets hot in September, right?
It does. It gets well over 100 degrees.
Right, and that day it was hot.
Very, very high.
And it's not the first time you had a hot day, right?
No, it was just particularly hot that day.
It's not the first time you practiced on a hot day, was it?
That's true.
So you'd agree that the weather that day, normal for September in Waco.
Yeah, it was very hot.
I want to talk about some of the things you said you heard Coach Taylor say. So you said you were over 20 yards away from the soccer field when you were at the Burner Run. Is that right?
Yeah, about that, about the length of a hallway.
And it's your testimony that when the length of a hallway, 20 yards?
Yeah, just about 20 yards or so.
Big hallway, huh?
I mean, I could see the other field clearly and hear everything since it was just us out there playing soccer.
And you claim you could see what was going on from that far away, right?
Yes, I could.
I want to talk about a little bit why you may be so sure that you heard these things exactly the way you say you heard. As you already said, you don't really like Coach Taylor, right?
I don't, especially after what happened with Rory.
You blame him for Rory's death.
Absolutely.
You also don't like Coach Taylor because Coach Taylor took your position away, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. It did suck because I was an athlete, but that's not the only reason I don't like Coach Taylor.
But it was your senior year of high school that they took away your position.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was bad for me, but it's not the worst thing that happened to me. And I'm in college now, so I think everything's worked out for me.
He gave that position to she gave that position to her own daughter, right?
Yes.
You thought her daughter was as good as a player as you.
No, I didn't think she was.
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. Could you repeat your answer?
Yes, I said that that's correct. I did not think her daughter was as good of a player as I was.
Right, but you would say that Rory was a great player, right?
Oh, she was the best.
Say she was healthy.
Yes.
You'd say she practiced in the same conditions that you practice in, just like that day, right?
Yes.
So it was normal for Rory to do the things that you were doing that day.
Yes, until the tackling drill came along.
Well, let's talk about the tackling drill. You're aware as a soccer player that side tackles are part of a soccer game, right?
Yeah, the skill is definitely part of a soccer team. It's just the way that the exercise was done was something that we'd never done before.
Right, it was a new exercise, but you had practiced side tackles before, right?
Yes.
So you had practiced that skill, side tackling the ball from other players, at previous soccer practices.
Yes, just not in the way that this particular exercise was done.
Okay, so you had actually side tackled other players before in games and had practiced yourself.
Yes.
So you'd agree with me that side tackles are a normal part of the game of soccer.
Yeah.
Now you said a moment ago that Rory was a healthy, strong athlete. Did you know that Rory had a heart condition?
No, I don't think I did.
Did Rory ever tell you she knew she had a heart condition?
I don't believe so.
I just have a few more questions. You said on direct examination when you were speaking to my colleague, Miss Avey, that Rory seemed like they were declining this whole time going throughout the course of the practice. Is that right?
Yeah, she wasn't playing like herself and she was really pale. I mean, just physically, she didn't look very well.
Well, Ms. Saracen, this isn't the first time you talked about what happened that day, is it?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
This isn't the first time you told anyone about what happened that day on the field. You've told other people before, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I've talked about it with other people before.
I'll be more specific, Ms. Saracen. You sent a text message to one of your friends the day after Rory died, right?
Yeah, yes, that's true. I did.
And in that text message, you described what happened that day.
Yes, I believe that was in that text message.
Right, and on that day, the day after Rory died, you described what happened as Rory just
calls for hearsay. I believe the opposing counsel is about to elicit what's in the text message, which would be hearsay.
Your Honor, if I may, I'm impeaching the witness's testimony. The witness testified about this being a decline in Rory's health over the course of the practice. If I may proffer, Your Honor. Well, it's a bench trial, so can I tell you what the text message says?
You can.
Your Honor, the text message she sent, the statement she made the day after Rory died, contradicts the testimony she just gave on the stand. So I can impeach the witness with this previous statement because it's inconsistent testimony. I mean, it's inconsistent statements that she has made in the past.
Response?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Your Honor, if this is being used for impeachment purposes, then we would ask that it only be argued for impeachment purposes in closing argument. Is if it's not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, then we would withdraw our objection.
Is it being offered for the truth of the matter asserted?
Your Honor, this particular statement in itself is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. At this point, I'm using it to impeach the witness's statements from prior testimony.
I'm not entirely sure that it's inconsistent with the witness's testimony. If you can elicit, can you ask the witness to clarify her statement? Because I don't.
Your Honor, I'll ask a couple more questions to lay the foundation.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Saracen, you would agree then that Rory just collapsed out of nowhere on September 7th. Is that right?
In the sense that she was a high schooler that you wouldn't expect to just drop dead, yes.
You would agree that what happened to Rory, it was just so sudden, right?
Yeah, I mean, she was a healthy girl and she was a high schooler, and I just didn't expect to go to school that day and watch one of my best friends die in front of me. It was sudden like that. No one wants to have to expect that to happen.
Ms. Saracen, I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you for your testimony, Your Honor. I have no further questions at this time.
Redirect, Ms. Avey?
No redirect, Your Honor. May this witness be excused?
You can step down, Ms. Saracen. Plaintiff, call your next witness.
Your Honor, we do not have any further witnesses. However, we would ask at this time to read in portions of of Exhibit 16, which has already been admitted into evidence.
You may.
And Rima, my co-counsel, would you put the highlighted copy of the exhibit on the screen, please? Thank you. So, starting on page 2 of Exhibit 16, the paragraph after overview of opinions, it says, "Here is the opinion that I have reached in this case based on a reasonable degree of professional and medical certainty. Rory Street died as a result of heat exhaustion and/or heat stroke." Starting on the first line of page 3 of Exhibit 16, the report says, "Saracen described him or her as really struggling and unusually pale. According to Aubrey Saracen, at that point, Rory Street said she was feeling funny and complained of chest pain. Further along in paragraph 3, finally, after the 15th slide tackle, Aubrey Saracen describes Rory lying on the ground, groaning and convulsing. These symptoms are consistent with heat exhaustion and or heat stroke. Starting on the 3rd paragraph of page 3 of Exhibit 16. Additionally, there are several findings in the autopsy report that are consistent with heat exhaustion and or heat stroke. First, the autopsy report indicates that Rory Street had cerebral edema. Cerebral edema is often caused by and is completely consistent with heat exhaustion and or heat stroke. Also, the finding of muscle breakdown is also consistent with heat exhaustion and or heat stroke. Starting on the last paragraph of page 3 of Exhibit 16, it is also my opinion, within a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that Rory Street's death was not a result of cocaine use. And on page 4, the first paragraph, the amount of cocaine found in Rory Street's system was only 6 nanograms per milliliter, which is a finding consistent with the ingestion of only a nominal amount of cocaine, or that there was a great deal of time between ingestion and testing. And with that, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to take up before we start with the defense case and I take a second to do the math?
Your Honor, I do have a motion for directive verdict. Are we going to have a break? I could do it now.
We'll go ahead and do the motion, handle any motions for Jamal or for directive verdict. And then I will tally things up and y'all are welcome to get a drink while I am working on the math.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Your Honor, we're moving for directive verdict under Rule 50. At this point, there has been no established standard of care in this case. One of the elements of the defendant, or excuse me, the plaintiff will have to prove in order to meet their burden was that there was a breach of duty. We've heard no evidence in the plaintiff's case about how a reasonable coach conducts a practice. There's no standard of care for which a reasonable person can decide that the coach did not meet the standard of care. There's no evidence or testimony that anything he did breached the standard of care, and therefore they cannot satisfy their burden on that second element.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Today we've heard evidence and testimony from Aubrey Saracen that Coach Reese Taylor was her coach, and therefore we've established a coach-player relationship. Additionally, to supply that duty, we've also heard testimony from Aubrey Saracen that she played on this team for 4 years, certain drills that have been consistent over the 4 years and drills that were not. And therefore, there is enough information here for a jury to find that there was a duty and therefore some of the defendant's actions breached that duty. Additionally, we do believe that we'll have the opportunity to cross-examine Reese Taylor in the defendant's case in chief and believe that a duty will be established through that cross-examination.
Your motion for a directive verdict, Jamal, is denied. I'm going to tally up the time that each of you have done, and we will meet back here in 2 minutes at 5:27.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, are both parties back and ready to proceed with the defense case?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, for the plaintiff, I have you with 30 minutes and 22 seconds left.
Okay.
For the defense, 38 minutes and 15 seconds.
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, you can start with your case whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor, before we call any live witnesses, we'd like to read some deposition testimony. If my colleague, Ms. Doyle, could come up on the screen and assist me.
She may.
For the court's reference, Your Honor, this is from the deposition testimony of a trainer who was present on the field. Their name is Jess Merriweather. The first line is on page 2. Page 2 starts with line 13. May I proceed?
Yeah.
How long have you lived in Waco?
Just a couple of years now. I grew up in Houston, but then I went to Texas A&M for undergrad, and then I got a master's degree in sports training from A&M as well. After that, I worked for a couple years at another high school in College Station before I got the job at Waco High.
And what is your job at Waco High?
I'm an athletic trainer, and I also teach health.
Okay, the next page, Your Honor, will be on is 9, starting with line 1. Did Rory ever say anything to you about feeling bad that day?
No, never said anything to me. And here's the thing. I'm there to take care of those players and they know it. I'm kind of a combination trainer and guardian to the team. So they trust me, and I trust them to tell me if something is wrong or if they're hurting. Rory didn't say a word, and she would have. Rory was a tough kid, but she knew her limits and would have let me or coach know when she needed water.
Your Honor, I'm sorry to interrupt. I would object that the last lines 6 through 8 that were read are speculation. Starting with, and she would have.
Response?
Your Honor, this is a rationally based perception. This is her light opinion is what she expected from Rory, based on her interaction with Rory in the past.
Sustained.
Motion to strike the statements starting with, and she would have, and ending with, she needed water.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Yeah, you're muted, Your Honor. I didn't hear. I assume you said granted.
Yes, I said granted.
Your Honor, the next line is on page 8, starting with line 8. Were you at practice the day Rory died?
I was.
Did you see Rory running Burma Road?
I saw Rory over on Burma Road, but I wasn't watching her closely.
Did you see Rory doing the slide tackling drill?
Again, I saw that happening, and I certainly saw parts of it, but I didn't watch closely.
What were you doing while all this was going on?
I was taping another student's ankle about 40 yards away.
At any time, did you see Rory stumbling, faltering, or slowing down in a way that would have indicated she was in trouble?
No, not at all.
Your Honor, the next portion of deposition testimony comes from the deposition of Jordan Street, the plaintiff, the mother of Rory Street. Starting on page 6, Your Honor, line 12. Did she use drugs?
Absolutely not. If I had suspected that or seen any evidence of that, then there would have been serious consequences.
I'm sorry, could you finish the rest of the answer, Ms. Doig?
Oh, I'm sorry, it got cut off.
No problem.
Whenever Rory acted up in the past, even just threats of grounding and chores around the house proved to be effective deterrents. I have no idea why the test showed that, but it can't be accurate.
The next lines I'll be reading are from page 7, line 19. When you were playing soccer at Waco High, did you ever have to run Burma Road?
Hell yeah, we did. I remember doing that when we were dogging it, or if we weren't in the correct position or something, Coach would send us off to run Burma Road. Do you want me to continue?
Yes, please. Please read the complete answer.
But I'll tell you this, none of my coaches ever made me or any other kid keep going when it was obvious that we were exhausted. Discipline is one thing, but that is just dangerous.
Thank you, Ms. Doig. Your Honor, that is all the deposition testimony we'll be reading.
Ms. Avey, do you have any cross-examination of those depositions that you would like to do?
No, Your Honor.
Very well, Mr. Love.
Your Honor, we would like to, at this point, call Reese Taylor to the stand. I think I might have lost my witness.
Reese Taylor. Coach Taylor.
Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you for staying. May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Reese Taylor.
What do you do for a living, Reese?
I'm a coach.
Where are you a coach at?
Waco High right now.
How long have you been coaching?
26 some odd years.
What kind of sports do you coach?
You name it, I've taught it. Basketball, softball, volleyball, track, pretty much everything.
Have you coached soccer?
Yes, sir.
How long have you coached soccer?
At Waco High, I've coached the varsity team for 6 years. Soccer in general, kind of lost track of time. It's been 20 plus seasons.
And in the 20 plus seasons that you've been a soccer coach, what's your coaching philosophy?
I believe in hard work and I care for my students.
Did you ever coach a student by the name of Rory Street?
I did.
What was your relationship with Rory like?
I thought we had a pretty healthy coach-student relationship. Every once in a while she'd get in trouble, but nothing any other teenager didn't do.
And how was Rory as a player?
Fantastic. She was my star athlete. She probably would have gone on to do great things.
So I want to talk about something we've heard a lot about today, that day on September 7th. Tell us when you started practice that day.
We started practice at about 3:15.
Is that a normal time for you to have practice?
Yes, sir.
What was the weather outside that day like?
It was hot.
Is it normal for it to be hot when you practice in Waco, Texas?
Yes, in the middle of summer.
And where did you practice at?
In the outside practice field near Waco High.
Is that the place you normally practice?
Yes, sir.
Why did you decide to practice outside your normal field that day when it was so hot out?
Conditioning. In order to keep my team safe, I have to make sure that they're able to withstand the heat. In soccer, you never know when you're going to play your next game. If it's going to be at night, if it's going to be at the hottest part of the day, you just need your team to be ready for everything.
Now, on that day, September 7th, was Rory acting like Rory normally acts?
She seemed distracted. She wasn't taking any criticism, and she just seemed to be dogging it.
What do you mean by dogging it?
Distracted, missing easy hits.
So when you saw Rory dogging it, what did you decide to do?
I decided to send her to run Burma Road.
We heard what Burma Road is, but can you tell us in your words what it is?
The player sprints 30 yards, dribbles the ball for 30 yards, makes the goal, and then bear falls back. And they repeat this until the coach tells them to stop.
And is it normal for you to ask students to run the Burma Road when they're dogging it?
Yes.
Did you or any coach before you have students run the Burma Road?
Absolutely. I actually had to run it a couple times whenever I was a student.
Were you on the Waco High School team?
Yes, sir.
And when you were on the Waco High School team yourself, was it normal for other players to run the Burma League?
Yes, sir.
I want to talk about some drills you ran that day. We heard about a side tackle drill.
Yes, sir.
What was that side tackle drill set up like?
What was it set up like?
Yeah, so just explain to us how you set that drill up, what you made people do.
Okay. So whenever I noticed that Rory wasn't, she was still being distracted on Burma Road, I had her do the side tackle drill to see if I could get her attention, because as a drill, it requires a lot of attention to do. What I had her do is start dribbling the ball and run towards players, and they would slide tackle and try to take the ball from her.
Okay. You said you had her come from the Burma Road because she seemed distracted. What do you mean by that?
She still seemed like she didn't have her head in the game. She wasn't paying attention.
At that point, did you think Rory was sick?
No, I just thought she wasn't listening.
Did she complain to you at all?
No, she did not.
Did you ever see her go over to your trainer that you have there and complain to them?
No.
The side tackle drill you ran, had you run that drill before?
Not that particular drill.
Had you had your students that you coach run any kind of drills with side tackles in them?
Yes, side tackles are important to learn.
So would you say it was normal to practice side tackle drills?
Yes.
At any point during that drill or before that drill, did you think that Rory needed medical attention?
No.
Did you see any signs that she was, not able to keep up? Did it look like to you that she wasn't able to do the drill?
No, she was sweating, but no more than any other player.
Did you know that Rory had an underlying heart condition?
No.
Did you know that Rory had used cocaine prior to your practice?
No.
Coach, if you had known those things, if you had thought she needed medical attention, what would you have done?
I wouldn't have let her play. I would have immediately sent her to get medical attention.
Pass the witness.
Cross-examination, Ms. Davey. Ms. Davey, you're muted.
Yes, I am. May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Coach Taylor, you're an experienced coach.
I would say so, yes.
And you describe yourself as a successful coach.
Yes, ma'am.
One measure of a successful coach is how much they win.
One measure, yes, ma'am.
Since taking over at Waco, you've won a lot.
Yes, ma'am.
To be that successful, you need talented students.
Absolutely.
Students like Rory Street.
Yes.
You claim that you want your students to perform at maximum potential.
Yes, ma'am.
So in your words, you push them to get the best out of them.
Yes, ma'am.
But you'd agree that as a coach, you have a duty to protect your players.
Absolutely.
To keep them safe.
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, Your Honor. Your Honor, at this point, I believe this testimony is misleading under Rule 403. To use the word duty has a legal connotation to it that this witness isn't qualified to attest to. I can't give testimony about whether they have a legal duty. So I think, that choice word, unless we, have a limiting instruction that this is not a legal duty she's saying she has, it's misleading under 403.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor. In this case, there is no jury. There's no possibility of prejudice or being misled. I'm sure Your Honor is able to weigh the evidence in the light that is logical.
Overruled.
You don't want to push your students too hard.
No, ma'am.
You also understand that parents like Miss Street, they depend on you to train your children to be good athletes.
Yes, ma'am.
But you also understand that those parents expect you to do your job safely.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the ways that you keep that promise to the parents is by staying up to date on safe coaching practices.
Yes, ma'am.
To do that, you attend coaching clinics several times a year.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Taylor, referring you to your exhibit file, will you please take a look at exhibit 11 for identification?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
referring court and counsel to exhibit 11 for identification. When you have it up there, just let me know.
I have it up.
Okay. Ms. Taylor, you recognize this form?
Yes, ma'am.
These are slides from a PowerPoint presentation that are given at an annual meeting of the Texas High School Soccer Coaches Association.
Yes, ma'am.
And they're in substantially the same condition as when you first saw them.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, the plaintiff moves exhibit 11 into evidence.
All right. I object under 702, Your Honor. This is an improper expert opinion. We have no idea who prepared this PowerPoint presentation. We have no idea what principles or methods they relied upon in order to put together this PowerPoint presentation. They've not laid the foundation to allow these expert conclusions and evidence under 702. This could have been put together by an intern for all we know.
Ms. Avey, can you establish where these slides came from?
Yes, Your Honor. The front of the PowerPoint says that they came from the annual meeting of the Texas High School Soccer Coaches Association, and the witness just said that she viewed them at that association in a conference and in a meeting. They're not being used as an expert opinion. In fact, they're being used for notice.
Your Honor, if I may be heard on that.
You may.
Your Honor, these are expert opinions. These are improper opinions because they're stating standards that require specialized technical knowledge. And we have no foundation. While this may have come from an association who endorses these standards, we have no idea who wrote this. So for us to understand, we need to know who wrote this before we can say whether it is established under 702 and meets the prongs of 702 for an expert opinion to be admitted.
Mr. Love, I don't think Ms. Avey is going to use these as an expert opinion. If you have questions about the Texas Girls Coaches Association or whether or not the witness has previously seen these slides or whatnot, you can take it up on your next opportunity to question the witness. Overruled.
And Your Honor, permission to publish exhibit 11 for the court.
Yes, you may.
Rima, can you put up exhibit 11, please? Thank you very much. Ms. Taylor, and Rima, can you go to the second page of the PowerPoint, please? Thank you. Ms. Taylor, on this second page of this document, it talks about practicing in the heat.
Yes, ma'am.
And what to do when temperatures reach 100 degrees or above.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, on September 7th of 2018, you were holding a team practice on campus.
Yes, ma'am.
In the middle of the afternoon.
Yes, ma'am.
On a particularly hot day.
Yes, ma'am.
It was about 103 degrees. I'm sorry, I may have missed your answer.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I said yes. Sorry.
No worries. And just to be clear, you don't practice in the shade.
The practice field isn't in the shade, no.
That's right, you practice in the sun.
Yes, ma'am.
Because in your words, it actually toughens your players up.
Yes, ma'am.
On this document, it recommends that in the heat, practices must include a 5-minute break every 15 minutes.
It does recommend that.
And that those breaks should be in the shade if possible.
Yes, ma'am.
But on that day, September 7th, 2018, You didn't give breaks every 15 minutes.
I don't recall.
You don't recall what types of breaks you gave on the day that one of your players died?
Do not, ma'am.
Well, you certainly don't remember then. You do remember that you certainly didn't provide any shade on that day.
I know that the practice field isn't shaded.
Now, this PowerPoint also recommends that in the heat, no practice lasts longer than 2 hours.
Yes, ma'am.
But your practices usually last up 2 to 3 hours.
Usually, yes.
On the day of September 7th, 2018, you were unhappy with Rory Street's performance in practice.
Yes, ma'am.
You've described her as dogging it, like you did on direct examination.
Yes, ma'am.
You didn't think she was listening to your criticism that day.
I did not.
It started to anger you.
I was upset, yes.
Well, in your own words, you said, nothing will get your heat up quicker than a player that just won't listen.
Yes.
Now, this incident with Rory wasn't the first time you've gotten angry with a student.
It was not.
You left your last job after you grabbed a player by the jersey and yelled at them during a game.
I did.
An incident where you admit you really lost it and ended up pushing the kid to the ground.
It was a mistake, yes.
According to you, that kind of thing happens when you're just as competitive as you are.
Well, it happened once.
Well, and then it happened on September 7th, 2018, when you pulled Rory Street up by the back of the jersey.
I didn't do that. I didn't pull Rory Street by her jersey.
Objection. At this point, I have to renew my motion to strike on this issue, as she just asked a question that you did it again to Rory Street. Your Honor, your ruling was that she could use this evidence and elicit this testimony to show knowledge. By asking the question, you did it again, that's clearly eliciting this testimony for propensity purposes only.
Sustained.
Your Honor, may I be heard?
Briefly.
The witness denied it in the first place, so in actuality, there is no action in conformity on the record. And my follow-up question was going to be, after that incident, you admit you know you went too far.
Your Honor, it's still the same issue.
Repeat your last question one time.
The follow-up question, Your Honor?
No, the one before the follow-up question.
Oh, that you then on September 7th, 2018, pulled Rory Street up by the back of her jersey, and the witness said, no, I didn't do that.
Your Honor, she said pulled it up again. She used the word again. That's what I'm objecting to use that for propensity. To say she did it in the past, she's more likely to do it again. This witness denied it.
I'm going to sustain the objection as to the use of the word again. If you'd like to rephrase your question, you can do so.
Yes, Your Honor. You admit that after that altercation with the student at your prior high school, that you went too far in that case.
Absolutely.
You admit that you know that what you did was wrong.
It was, yes.
But on September 7th, 2018, you said that you don't believe that anything you did that day was wrong.
On the day Rory died?
Yes, on the day you say that you don't believe you did anything wrong on the day that Rory died.
No.
The day that you pulled her up by the back of the jersey.
I didn't pull her up by her jersey.
Okay. Now, I do want to go back to September 7th of 2018. When you thought that Rory was goofing off that day, you were about 20 to 30 yards away from her.
Yes, ma'am.
But you never walked over to watch her up close.
No, ma'am.
And you never asked what was going on with her that day.
No, ma'am.
Never asked if she was all right.
No, ma'am.
You just decided to send her to run sprints on Burma Road.
Yes, ma'am.
You say that that's a way to teach your athletes a lesson.
Yes, ma'am.
which you'd agree was exactly what you wanted to do to Rory that day.
Doing Burma Road, yes.
Well, you actually said in your prior deposition that you wanted to teach Rory a lesson that day.
Yes.
Burma Road involves sprinting.
Yes, ma'am.
And dribbling a ball.
Yes, ma'am.
Then shooting a goal.
Yes, ma'am.
And then crawling on your hands and feet back to the starting line.
Yes, ma'am.
That's about 120 yards in total.
Yes.
And they have to keep doing that until you tell them to stop.
Yes, ma'am.
But you don't believe that a practice like that might endanger their health?
Absolutely not.
When you watched Rory running Burma, you thought she was still dogging it, right?
I did.
Even though this was completely inconsistent with how Rory normally acted.
Well, normally, yeah. Normally she was my star player.
In your words, that's why you found her performance that day so frustrating, right?
Yes.
So that's when you decided you had to discipline her in some other way.
Well, I had to get her attention.
And so you got her attention by concluding that you concluded that you were going to do your slide tackling drill at that point.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's talk about that. You concluded that disciplining Rory was for her own good.
Yes, ma'am.
And that it was for the good of the team.
Yes, ma'am.
You believed that you couldn't allow her laziness or irresponsibility to continue, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you had Rory participate in that slide tackling drill we just talked about.
Yes, ma'am.
You chose that drill in particular because slide tackles are hard tackles with lots of physical contact.
Yes.
Because you wanted to make sure Rory got the point that her attitude and effort weren't appropriate.
Yes, ma'am.
But directing you back to Exhibit 11, Rima, or Your Honor, may my co-counsel post Exhibit 11 for the court?
You may.
Thank you, Rima. Now, Ms. Taylor, directing you back to Exhibit 11, you had specific training about slide tackling.
Yes, ma'am.
It said that towards the top of this slide that tackles can cause serious injuries.
Yes, ma'am.
It also says that when teaching slide tackling, you should instruct your players not to tackle unless it's necessary.
Absolutely. In a game.
Well, I'm sorry. On the PowerPoint, the second bullet in the second section, it says, don't tackle unless it's necessary, right?
Yeah, and it's talking about in a game. It's important to practice it.
Right, but it doesn't say only in a game on that one bullet point, right?
On that bullet point, no, it doesn't.
So it's important not to tackle unless it's necessary whenever you're practicing the skill.
That's what the slide says.
But on September 7th, you instructed your entire team to slide tackle Rory one by one.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, slide tackle drills are something that you do on a regular basis with your team.
Not that particular drill.
That's right. Not that particular drill. In fact, you admit that you don't usually do it like this.
I do admit that, yes.
And you had never used this drill for discipline before.
I haven't.
After the first few people tackled Rory, you saw her struggling, right?
Yeah, no more than any other player would be in that situation, I didn't think.
But you did see her struggling?
Yes, ma'am.
But you didn't stop the tackling drill?
No, ma'am.
Because in your words, to have her struggle was the point, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You instructed them to keep tackling her 14 or 15 times.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's when she collapsed on the field.
Yes, ma'am.
That's where she died.
It is.
Now, Ms. Taylor, you claim that it was Rory who made bad choices that day.
I believe she did.
Even sitting here today, you believe there is nothing you would do differently, right?
With hindsight, I absolutely would do something differently.
You remember giving a prior deposition in this matter?
Yes, ma'am.
At the time you were asked questions and you answered them?
Yes, ma'am.
And before you answered those questions, you raised your right hand and you swore to tell the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
And you did tell the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
And that statement was in that statement, you had a chance to review it for accuracy after you gave it?
Yes, ma'am.
And you signed it verifying that it was accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Rima, can you pull up on the screen page 10, line 22 of Ms. Taylor's deposition? Referring court and counsel to page 10, line 22 of the deposition. Ms. Taylor, please read along silently. Isn't it true that you were asked, Coach, do you take any responsibility for what happened to Rory Street? And you answered, no, absolutely not. I coach that kid just like I coach all of my kids to work hard, play hard, and practice hard. I wouldn't have done anything differently. It's just unfortunate that Rory made poor choices that day. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
So you admit here today that you still believe you would do nothing differently?
If I didn't have the benefit of hindsight, no, I wouldn't have done anything differently.
Well, you don't qualify that statement in your deposition with a statement about hindsight, right?
Oh, I wasn't asked a statement about hindsight.
You don't take any responsibility for what happened to Rory. Is that right, Ms. Taylor?
I can't. We did nothing differently. It was a normal practice.
Pass the witness.
Proceed, Your Honor.
One second. Go ahead with your redirect, Mr. Love.
Coach Taylor, you were asked about a statement you made about bad choices Rory made. What were you referring to?
I was referring to the fact that after she was taken away by the ambulance, I found out that she had cocaine in her system.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your response.
Maybe I need to. I was referring to the fact that afterwards I found out that Rory had cocaine in her system.
Had you ever found out that any of your other players had used cocaine in the past?
Not that I can recall.
Would you have ordered Rory and the other students to engage in a drill if you had known that she was using cocaine?
Objection, speculation. Calls for speculation.
Your Honor, I'm asking the witness what she would have done. It's her own testimony, and her judgment is what we're here to discuss today.
Overruled.
If you had known that Rory had been using cocaine, would you have allowed her to engage in practice like that? No further questions.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
In that case, Coach Taylor, you may step down. Mr. Love, call your next witness.
I have a moment, Your Honor. Your Honor, I have no further witnesses at this time. Your Honor, I do want to make clear that the autopsy and the toxicology report are part of the record. I will be using them in my closing argument, but I have no need to pull them up at this time. I will be using them in my closing argument as previously admitted. With that, we rest our case in chief.
Very well. Plaintiff, do you rest and close?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. I will do a short tally up of the time, and then we will proceed with closing arguments starting at 6:04.
Yes, Your Honor.
Are the parties ready to proceed with closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Plaintiff, you have 15 minutes and 53 seconds left for closing. Defense, you have 27:52. And if you can proceed when you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. When high school student Rory Street stepped onto the Waco High School soccer practice field on September 7th, 2018, she expected another exhausting practice. She expected her commanding coach would ask them to scrimmage from 2 to 3 hours. And she even expected that she'd have to practice all throughout the Waco heat. But what she never expected on that day was that her coach would become so frustrated with her star player that her desire to punish Rory would become more important than her duty to protect her. And Rory's mother, she never expected that on that day when Rory walked out the door, that it would be the last time she would see her daughter alive. Today, the issue for you to decide is if Coach Taylor will finally be held responsible for her negligent actions and the tragic death they caused. Today, we have proven that by the greater weight of the evidence that the defendant, Reese Taylor, is liable by establishing two things. First, that the defendant failed to protect Rory Street. And second, that the defendant's failures caused her death. So let's talk about that first thing that the evidence has shown, that the defendant failed to protect Rory Street. Now, as a teacher and a coach, Coach Taylor had a duty to protect her students. But when it came time to meet that duty, Coach Taylor, she was all talk and no action. Because today she's come up here and she's tried to say that it was safety first. But Your Honor, what we learned today is it was about placing first. We all love a winner, but not at the cost that Coach Taylor is willing to pay. Not at the cost of a child's life. So how did the defendant really fail to protect Rory Street that day? Well, today we've heard about a culture of intimidation and abuse. The defendant thinks that her job, as she was forced to admit on cross-examination, is to toughen her players up and to push them hard. So hard that she's going to make them run until they pass out, like she told Rory Street on September 7th, 2018. But then she takes it even further. She actually abuses them verbally. When she shouts across the field, "I'm going to show you exactly how not special you are." She screams at them and she says that it's to motivate them, but it's not. It just intimidates them. And she gets angry when they don't listen or they don't perform. In fact, you heard her admit today, nothing gets her heat going like a kid that doesn't listen. And on September 7th, 2018, she didn't think Rory was listening to her. But somehow she still claims today that she didn't do anything wrong. She claims that she's all about tough love, but she's fair. And that she knows when she crosses the line and when she doesn't. But Your Honor, we heard today that that's not true. She admits that she knows that she crossed the line in the past when she pulled a kid down by their jersey. She admits that. She knows that was crossing the line. But today, she admits that she would do nothing different when she instead pulled a kid up by the jersey? How can we balance those two statements? Shouldn't they be the same? And that's how you know that you can't give a lot of credibility to Reese Taylor's testimony today. But then the defendant goes further. The defendant says, well, I didn't breach my duty because Burma Road is reasonable. But think about it, Your Honor. We're talking about 103-degree weather. We're talking about no breaks, no water, and no shade. Running 120 yards, not always just on your feet, sometimes on your hands and your feet. And she wants to still claim that Burma Road is reasonable? In fact, today she had to admit that having Aubrey and Rory run Burma Road actually violated that PowerPoint that we saw today. And Rima, if you'll put up PowerPoint 11 to remind Your Honor that we saw that there are recommendations that coaches in Texas are told to follow. And Coach Taylor didn't follow any of them. When Aubrey and Rory were out there, they didn't get any breaks, they didn't get any water, they didn't get any shade. And it was above 100 degrees. That is not reasonable. She assumes, as a coach, that when a child is feeling ill, that they're just dogging it. And instead of checking in with that child, instead of asking them if something is wrong, despite the fact that she claims that she has a healthy coach-student relationship, she just sends them out to Burma Road, ignores the fact that her star player is pale, has chest pains, is feeling funny, and is struggling. And Your Honor, whether she didn't know that Rory had those symptoms that day, or she just didn't care, both of those things are a breach of her duty that she owed to Rory Street. But then she puts Rory Street into even more danger by doing this slide tackling drill. The slide tackling drill that we heard quite a bit about today, and what we heard from every single person was that nobody has ever seen this done before. Nobody has ever done it. In 20 years of coaching, Coach Taylor has never disciplined a student that day. And the time that she did, a student died of heat exhaustion. The drill itself, Your Honor, isn't the problem. It's the way that it was used. We all understand that slide tackling is a part of soccer. We all understand that it's something you have to practice, but it is not something that you get to abuse. It is not something that you get to use to discipline your players. That 15 people in a row get to tackle a girl to the ground over and over and over again. And that you yank that girl up by the back of her jersey every single time. This drill is a clear evidence of the breach of her duty. And it resulted in Rory Street on the ground, seizing, convulsing, twitching, dying, as her entire team had to watch it happen. And that brings me to the second thing that the evidence has shown, that it was the defendant's failures that caused Rory's death. But as you've heard today, the defense doesn't want to believe that. And instead, they want to blame the victim. So they brought you this theory about cocaine. We've heard today about the autopsy and the toxicology report, how there was 60 nanograms per milliliter found inside Rory Street's body. But what we also heard from the board certified cardiologist with 20 years of experience treating heart patients is that that amount was just too small. He told, when I read you those portions of the expert report, you heard Rory's symptoms, Rory's seizures, Rory's fluid in the brain, and Rory's muscle damage. That is all consistent with heat exhaustion and heat stroke. And Your Honor, when you go back and you review those two expert reports in your chambers after this trial, you'll see that those are not consistent. Fluid in the brain and muscle damage with cocaine inducing a heart attack. So who do you believe? Do you believe the cardiologist with 20 years of experience who actually knows how to diagnose somebody's medical cause of death? Or do you believe the bought and paid for toxicologist who, when you review his CV, you will see that he has been tendered 50 times and has been an expert 200 times? Your Honor, it's clear who's credible in this case. And if you want a medical opinion, that comes from our expert. Today, we are confident that we have proven by a preponderance of the evidence that Coach Taylor had a duty, that she breached that duty, and that she proximately caused Rory Street's death. Hold her responsible for her actions. Find her liable.
Defense close.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, we heard today that a lot of the things that happened on September 7th were the same things that happened at every other practice that has occurred at Waco High School for years. Whether you think Coach Taylor could have done a better job or did a bad job, this is a case about causation. And there are two things that occurred that are facts that not come from our expert, but that come from an autopsy report conducted by the medical examiner in Waco, who's not bought and paid for by us. He's bought and paid for by the taxpayers. Independent, no reason to lie. That autopsy report talks about a heart condition that Rory Street had. That toxicology report, which we didn't pay for, the citizens of Waco paid for that. For that medical examiner to do that toxicology report and find that cocaine. It's not our expert. It's an independent group of people deciding this. The first thing that toxicology report showed was that Rory knew something that no one else could have known. She had cocaine in her system. And that autopsy report, the medical examiner showed what no one could know, not even Rory herself, that she had a heart condition that was hidden. So let's talk about how this was the same as every other day, because that's really whether we can determine whether Coach Taylor's actions were the cause of Rory's death. Because if everything else was the same and nobody else ever got hurt, then it can't be that caused her death. Just like every other practice Rory went to, it's in Waco. It's hot, normal. It's the same soccer field, normal. It's Burma Road, normal. The coach ran it, Rory's mom ran it, another student ran it that day for longer than Rory did. This isn't some inhumane, grueling thing. This is a tough coach making her competitors do tough exercise. But it wasn't just that day. It was every practice. You heard about the drill tackling. Again, drill tackling, it's not an abnormal thing to occur. That drill was new. But just because it had never been done before doesn't mean it violates some standard of care. The only standard of care they brought you or tried to bring you was a PowerPoint presentation, and we don't even know who wrote it. We don't know where that came from. We don't know where, what group of people put that together and whether that had to be followed or not. They have no standard of care expert to say that there was a breach of duty regarding the regulations that a coach should follow in soccer. You didn't hear expert testimony about that. It's not in the record. So what else was normal? Well, you heard that there was an athletic trainer on the field there to listen to students if they had a complaint about something that was going on, if they weren't feeling well. That was normal, but you heard Rory never went over there. Now, she said that there were no breaks that day. But that's not the testimony we heard. We heard from both witnesses who testified, they don't remember if there were breaks. So that's a mischaracterization of the record. We don't know how many breaks they had, but they usually had breaks in practice. That was normal. Just because they don't remember what happened that day doesn't mean they didn't happen. And there was another mischaracterization. She said in her closing argument that Coach Taylor pulled Rory up by the back of his shirt. Coach Taylor denied that. And then she argued to you that it's the same thing he did in the past, which Your Honor knows well as I is propensity evidence, and that can't be considered as part of the record either. This wasn't an inhumane practice. This was a normal practice that they did every day. Admittedly, a hard one, but not one that caused Rory's death. Let's talk about the first thing that caused Rory's death. The one that only Rory knew about. Ms. Doig, if you could pull up the toxicology report. This is the toxicology report that was not created by our expert, but was created by the medical examiner of the county of McLennan County, Waco, Texas. It says that there were 60 nanograms in her blood. It says that you can pull the call out down because I think there's something else I want to read off there. It says that that's a small, and we agree, our expert and their expert both agree that that's a small amount of cocaine. And we're not saying that she overdosed. We're not saying that cocaine alone is what caused her death. But nobody else knew about it. And that matters for foreseeability. First of all, you heard the testimony of the mother of Rory Street from their deposition that she saw no signs of cocaine use. Her best friend said she saw no signs of cocaine use. So how can it be expected that Coach Taylor could or should have known that Rory was using cocaine? Coach Taylor said if she did know about that cocaine, she wouldn't have done that drill. There's no foreseeability there if she doesn't know about the cocaine. That second thing, that heart condition that not even Rory knew about. And you can pull up the autopsy report now. Or not, maybe not the autopsy report. But the autopsy report, when you look at it, Judge, is going to tell you that there was an underlying heart condition that was found in the autopsy by the medical examiner. That's independent. And that's not something that Rory knew, his mom knew, his friends knew. So it's not something Coach Taylor could have known or did know. Because if Coach Taylor did know, she wouldn't have ran that drill. That's why this case is all about causation. And I want to go to the charge we have, let's talk a little bit about the causation charge. If we can pull that charge up for my reference. I know the court's aware, but I'd like to look at it for my reference. I think I might be on a little bit of delay, but I have a lot of time, so. Your Honor, when you see the jury, the charge says that in order for him to be a proximate cause, it has to be foreseen that the event or some similar event might reasonably result therefrom. If he couldn't foresee that Rory had cocaine, she didn't know that Rory had cocaine in her blood and a heart condition. She couldn't have known that that drill would have killed her. Because other kids she's coached have gone through slide tackles. Imagine a soccer game where you're playing a soccer game for an hour. Think about how many times a slide tackle takes place on that field. There are soccer games at 103 degrees in Waco, Texas in September. These things happen and no one gets hurt. It's not foreseeable that someone would die of sudden cardiac arrest from a drill that practices a skill that they've done before. But it is a cause in fact, if the cocaine use and the heart condition made her more susceptible to the heat that day. If her use of cocaine made her more likely to get hurt. And if the coach didn't know that, then he couldn't have foreseen this result. The plaintiff's expert has no explanation about that heart condition. They hired a cardiologist to tell you about how he died of a heart attack, a sudden cardiac heart attack. And he didn't even mention that there's this underlying heart condition in the autopsy. It wasn't our hired gun who came up with this. It's their hired gun who ignored it. Because he knows the truth, or he knows the facts. That heart condition was there. That was a normal day. It was a normal, practice for the coach. Coach did what they normally did at practice. She pushed her athletes. The Burma Trail was a normal run. The slide tackle was a normal drill. The only thing different was that Rory had that cocaine and that underlying condition. Now, I'm not saying we're to blame Rory for doing it because they didn't know that one time doing cocaine would cause them to have a heart attack. Maybe if Rory knew she had that heart condition, she wouldn't have done it. But sometimes one time is too much. And that's what happened to Rory, and it's unfortunate, but the law is clear. If it's not foreseeable, they can't be the proximate cause. And if they're not the proximate cause, then they're not liable. Thank you.
Your Honor, may I ask for a time check for rebuttal?
Ms. Avey, you have 4 minutes and 20 seconds for rebuttal.
Thank you. May I proceed?
You may.
Mr. Love just got up here and told you that this is a case about causation. It doesn't matter if you think that Coach Taylor did something wrong, Your Honor. So, Your Honor, despite the fact that Mr. Love has now said multiple times throughout trial that there was no duty that Coach Taylor owed and that there is no standard of care, he himself clearly seems to think that his client has already breached that non-existent duty and that you should only focus on causation. So that in itself explains why he keeps calling myocarditis a heart condition. When you go back and look at all of the expert reports in this case, the defense experts report, which Rima, can you publish, talks about myocarditis. And it says that it's an inflammation or swelling of the heart muscle. It can affect the heart muscle and the heart's electrical system. And at the very end, it says, this is a physical symptom. This is not a heart condition. A physical symptom. Symptoms come and go. Heart conditions don't. And does he really want you to believe that it's more likely that the chief of cardiology at Memorial Hospital in Waco, Texas, flat out ignored a heart condition on an autopsy? Or is it more likely that this is not a heart condition, just like the defense's own expert says? The causation in this case is absolutely clear. It was heat exhaustion. It was heat stroke, because Rory Street was forced to go through tireless physical activity that was worse than anything that Coach Taylor had ever thrown at her before, in 103-degree weather, without any water, with no breaks and no shade. Because Aubrey said on direct examination that after they were sent to Burma Road, she knows that they did not receive a break and that they did not receive any water. Your Honor, causation is clear, duty is clear, breach is clear, liability is clear. Find Coach Reese Taylor liable for her negligent actions.
All right, court is in recess. Good job, both sides. I will go and let everyone know that we are finished outside. Judges, if y'all would submit your ballots to Robert, I will go, and as soon as he has all of your ballots, I'll come back and release you. Everybody do please stay in the room until we have all the ballots confirmed.